This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on Monday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, and we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Yes, live at the Matt Black Kia Studios on 97.3 ESPN. Glad to have you all on board the show today. Glad to be talking with all you about, well, Sixers. Pretty good game last night. Not too bad, right? Pretty good deal for the Sixers last night. Flyers, not so much. Rough last couple of games. Little news on Brian Elliott and what's going on with the lines tonight in the Flyers game. We'll get to that with Kevin Durso coming up at 6:20 tonight here on 97.3 ESPN. Plus, we'll get more into this Eagles stuff because I know we started talking about it on Saturday when the story was only about less than 24 hours old. So we'll get more into it as people have more time to read and digest the story. And, of course, you guys can text in at 609-403-0973 to get in the conversation, or you can comment down below on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as you watch the show at 973 ESPN on Twitter. You know, one of the things that stands out to me from this weekend isn't just that the Sixers won. It's that when you look at a situation for a team like the Sixers winning, and we'll get to the Eagles stuff in just a moment, but we got to touch on the Sixers really quick because for the 76ers, what they did was prove that this is not just Joel Embiid's team. This team has a long history of having trouble winning without Joel Embiid. And now they've won 2 straight games without Embiid. I know people might say, well, they beat Chicago and they're not a good team. And they beat the Spurs and they're not what they used to. But you forget about the era when this team wouldn't beat the teams they were supposed to. Remember those years? Remember the years when this team couldn't beat the teams they were supposed to? I certainly do. Remember every time the Sixers would lose to a team they're supposed to beat, like, I don't know, like Cleveland or Detroit or fill in the blank team that wasn't good. It was always, this is why Brett Brown should be fired. This is why Brett Brown shouldn't be here. This is why Ben and Joel can never win a championship because they can't beat the teams they're supposed to. Or they'll throw in Tobias. Oh, this is why Tobias Harris doesn't deserve that contract. People would always lump all of these criticisms they have about the team on top of those losses. Now we transition, and this team is beating the teams they're supposed to. They're beating the teams that are lesser than them. And look at the guys who are coming up in those games. Another game that Tobias Harris leads the team in scoring. Another game the Sixers win where Tobias Harris gets a minimum of 20 points and 7 rebounds. By the way, he also had 7 assists last night. The only person who had more assists in the game yesterday was Ben Simmons. He had 9. For the people who love the point to the turnovers, the team had 11 turnovers last night. Cut that back. People love the point to the plus minus, who are the analytics guys. Tobias Harris was a plus 36 last night. But he's not worth the money. You know who else played well last night? Thibault. This kid's incredible. This kid is going to be your 3-and-D guy of the future. Danny Green ain't going to be here probably beyond next year or the year after. He's probably not going to be here next year or the year after that. One of those two. Thibault's going to fill that role. And Thibault is going to be great. Another couple threes last night. Another 3 steals. Does all the little things. He showed you a little something. Right? He's showing you a little something. I know people love to focus on Korkmaz because he put up 16 points. And, Dwight Howard and Bradley, because combined they're putting up some nice stat lines, filling the void of Joel Embiid. I mean, listen, I ain't going to sneeze at 16 total rebounds, that's for sure. But I think that what you're seeing is the Sixers drafted Thibault. People criticized it. People gave Tobias Harris the money. They criticized it. They traded for Danny Green. They criticized it. They said Seth Curry is too small. Well, he's doing just fine. By the way, you look at Seth Curry. Remember, people, the storyline was, well, since he got COVID, he can't shoot anymore. Remember that whole narrative? Seth Curry all of a sudden has found his three-point shot again. Have you noticed that? I certainly have. All of a sudden, he just found it. All of a sudden, he's hitting threes again. It's funny how that works. We always heard the term shooters shoot. Well, he shot his way out of the slump. He figured it out. So when you look at this basketball team, you realize that the reason why they're a contender, or the reason why they are where they are, is because they are the sum of their parts. They're not just one guy. Joel Embiid may be the league MVP. But tell me a league MVP in the last 20 years who did it all by himself. You can't. There is none. There's no MVP in the modern NBA who did it all by himself. Don't give me Bill Walton in 78 or whatever year it was. I don't want to hear it. Teams win championships. An MVP is usually the best player on his team. Outside of Russell Westbrook with OKC, nobody does it by themselves. And by the way, Westbrook doesn't have a triple-double if his teammates don't hit the shots when he's passing them the ball. We have these disillusions about sports sometimes, and I see them online. I'm just like, what is going on, people? What are we doing? Seriously, what are we doing sometimes? It's perplexing to me. Game night here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you guys. Of course, Kevin Durso will get more of the Flyers coming up at 6:20 tonight. We'll get into that with Durso about what is going on with the Flyers. The Flyers, that's another team. We don't know what's going on with them. Listen, I like watching hockey, all right? I enjoy the game of hockey. But you tell me that you put Brian Elliott out there because you're giving Carter Hart a mental break. All right, fine. I can work with that. I can rock with that. I can deal with that. Now he's not even playing tonight because Elliott needs a break. What is going on? So we'll get to that with Durso coming up in a little bit. We're going to get back to this Eagles stuff here now because we started digesting this over the weekend, right? We started digesting this Howie Roseman story over the weekend. And as time goes on, Mike Gill brought this up on the Sports Bash. The more and more you see people talk about this article, the more and more you see that this article is only being used as fodder for people to prove their points. It's not being used as information. It's not being used as reporting. And that's really disappointing. It's really disappointing that where we are at as a sports society, that we just can't accept reporting anymore. We pick and choose the parts we like and don't like, and then we run with it. Listen, I'm used to people doing that in politics and with religion and things like that, but now we're doing it with sports. And it's just really, really intellectually dishonest and pathetic. I see the people online. That's half the reason why I don't comment halftime online. I don't sit there and blow up on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram because I just don't feel like dealing with idiots. These people take one quote or one part of this Jeff McClain article and they lose their minds. They lose their minds. One quote, one paragraph, one section, and they ignore the rest of the piece. Listen, I understand that this Jeff McClain article is ridiculously long. It's ridiculously extensive and exhaustive. But if you're going to have a comment on something, if you're going to call in the Sports Bash like we had earlier in the show, earlier in the day on 97.3 ESPN, if you're going to text the text board at 609-403-0973. If you're going to jump on the stream and chat with us as you watch us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you got to come at me with some information. There's an old legal philosophy. There are facts, and then there are true facts. There are the facts that people find to support their predisposed opinion or theories or beliefs. Then there's the true facts that people use to formulate their views and opinions and theories. And the problem is the majority of people, when it comes to this Eagles team, are doing the first and not the second. They're doing the facts, not the true facts. They keep changing the narrative. They keep manipulating the conversation to direct it where they want to. Because there's a lot of people, for whatever reason, and there's a lot of reasons. That's why I say that for whatever reason. There's a lot of reasons for this. But there's a lot of people who seem just disinterested in blaming the owner for anything. They only want to blame the GM, Howie Roseman. They want to ignore that the owner signs off on things. They don't want to blame the owner for what is going on. The article itself, written by someone who has himself been critical of Howie Roseman, says Jeffrey Lurie leaves Roseman to take the bullets. That's what it says in the article. That the owner uses Howie as a shield. And Howie's reward for being the battering ram for everybody around, despite everything that's going on, is people get to hate Howie and they get to love Lurie. You love the owner for winning you a Super Bowl, but you hate the GM because what? Andre Dillard hasn't worked out yet? You blame him for what? That Derek Barnett hasn't played out the way you wanted? You blame him for what? What exactly are we arguing about anymore? I don't even know. I don't even know what the beef with Howie Roseman is anymore. Because if you take down the evidence, everyone is good and bad on their resume. Everyone has positives and negatives on their resume. Howie Roseman was a part of not one, but two turnarounds for the Philadelphia Eagles. When Andy Reid left, he ran the draft, and he got this team going in a different direction with Chip Kelly. Then Chip Kelly kicked him to the broom closet. Then when Chip Kelly got fired, he came back in and turned things back around again, and they won a Super Bowl. So it's logical that this guy, Howie Roseman, is being entrusted to just do what he did already. Listen, you may not like some of the picks. You may not like some of the moves. But you can't tell me that you are having an intelligent conversation with me if you have nothing good to say about Howie Roseman. I don't love Howie Roseman. I don't hate the guy either. People ignore the fact that the article itself says that the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, is involved in first-round picks. That he was involved in the picks such as Jalen Hurts and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. And that puts Howie Roseman in an awkward spot. Sources tell Jeff McClain of the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm telling you, some of you guys are just really, really dead set on this Howie hate. And it's a shame. Because I love a world where we could have an honest conversation. And it feels like in this situation, people don't want to have a conversation. They just want to complain. They want to cry. They want to cast their own personal emotions on to Howie Roseman and the Eagles. It's a shame. And I know some of you out there don't want to hear that. I know some of you out there don't want to talk about that because I'm talking truth to you. You can't handle the truth. As Jack Nicklaus said, Jeff Bone and Pookie watching on YouTube says facts. Listen, Jeff, I can't help it people don't like the facts. I can't help it that people don't want to hear it. They don't want to have a conversation. But, Jeff, I appreciate you. I appreciate you sitting out there, watching the show on YouTube, 97.3 ESPN. You should subscribe. Sports Bash with Mike Gill every day, 2 to 6. Game night with myself, Josh Hennig, 6 o'clock when we come on. We're all live in the Matt Blatt Kia Studios here on 97.3 ESPN. 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. Live on your radio, 97.3 ESPN, where you can listen to tonight's Flyers game. Flyers versus who? Oh, the Rangers. That's right. Didn't they just play the Rangers? That's the great thing about the schedule. You don't really know who they're playing half time because they already played who they're playing. But we're going to get into that with Kevin Durso coming up next because some news about Brian Elliott that has to do with the goalie situation. What is going on with the goaltending situation? How much of the problems is actually on the goaltender? We're going to all that with Durso. Flyers game at 7 o'clock on 97.3 ESPN FM. And you can listen on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. I'm Josh Hennig here, live in the Matt Blatt Kia Studios on 97.3 ESPN. Matt Blatt Kia, they only get you approved today. It's Matt Blatt Kia in the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblattkia.com.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, 97.3 ESPN.com, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, and live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can watch the show here on 97.3 ESPN. Flyers hockey tonight. They're playing the Rangers again. What's not new is that, do we really have a goaltender problem in Philadelphia? We'll get to that coming up next here with Kevin Durso, our Flyers Insider for 97.3 ESPN.com, as the Flyers take on the Rangers again tonight. And, Kevin, what's interesting about this game tonight is Brian Elliott. He's not going to be around for the game tonight. I want to get into that with you because I think when I saw you report that earlier, I almost fell out of my chair. I was like, wait a minute. So first Carter Hart needed a mental break, and now Elliott needs a mental break?
Yeah, I don't know if that's anything significant, to be honest with you. Alain Vigneault's explanation was they worked him harder in practice today because they're not skating tomorrow. And that, to me, just kind of lends to the possibility that he goes back in on Wednesday, potentially, when they play the Rangers again, and gets set for more work as the week goes on. Obviously, they have to watch his usage anyway. At this stage of his career, he's not an everyday goaltender. And they tried to make him that for the last week and a half while they gave Carter Hart that mental reset. And ultimately that backfired because the problem that you had is you went to go and use Brian Elliott one more time on Saturday. I think you were gearing up for Carter Hart for this game anyway, but now you had to put Carter Hart in and play the last 2 periods of that game, or most of the last 2 periods of that game on Saturday, and that was not according to plan. So now you're kind of trying to figure out the best way to balance this goaltending situation right now, because normally you would start to be, this is about the point where you'd start to be turning to Carter Hart more and more, and the balance should be a little bit more differentiated at this point. It should be leaning more towards Carter Hart, but unfortunately, the way that he was following that game last Tuesday when they played Buffalo at home, the way that he was following the game, you could kind of tell during the game his body language wasn't very good, and then after the game, his comments said it all. And now you have to hope that this was enough time for a reset. It certainly didn't feel that way on Saturday. It just didn't feel like you wanted him in that game, and you had no choice because if you were going to try to find a way to win that game, Brian Elliott wasn't doing it for you that night. So that's part of it as well.
How much it is really the goaltender and how much it is really the guys in front of him? Because there's multiple times where I feel like the goaltender's on an island, whether it was Elliott or Hart on Saturday.
Yeah, it goes both ways for sure. The play in front of the goaltending has not been good all season long, basically, and it comes down to the one thing that's been consistent about this team is the amount of times they turn the puck over in a game. It's just a ridiculous amount of times it happens. Those are fixable mistakes. Puck management is something you can work on and improve as the season goes on. You build chemistry with line mates. You figure that out. This team hasn't had a lot of practice time. They haven't had a lot of consistent lineups, so guys are playing in different combinations. It's still no excuse. You're professional athletes. You find a way to figure it out, and they haven't yet. That being said, the last couple of games, you've seen how poor the goaltending has been in the last stretch. Carter Hart's performance on Tuesday against Buffalo kind of summed that up because he was struggling, and certainly there was a lot of turnovers and bad play in front of him, but he needs to be able to make those saves. That's part of what made the Flyers successful earlier in the year, is that they were playing like that in front of the goaltending, but they'd win games because they got some key saves. You saw it with Brian Elliott on Saturday, too. The first goal of the game that Washington scored on Saturday says it all. You got to control the rebound from that distance in the first place, and then he tries to get the rebound, and he's left scrambling. It's behind him. He's trying to reach for it. It's already in the net when he does. That kind of told you how sharp he was going to be for that game, and it continued throughout the rest of that first period and into the second when he gave up another one that was pretty harmless, all things considered. It's a transition rush, but you should have your square to the shooter. You should be able to make that save. So their save percentage is down, and that's a result of what's going on as well. But defensively, they haven't been much better either. So it's a combination of both, but you're not the key difference is you're not getting the key saves anymore like you were earlier in the year. So now it's costing you all the time.
Kevin Durso joining us here on Game Night, previewing Flyers versus Rangers at the top of the hour right here on 97.3 ESPN. And you can listen to the game on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Kevin's full preview of the game is over at 97.3 ESPN.com right now. Now, you mentioned about the practice and about guys being veterans, but here's the problem I have with that explanation, Kevin. Not that it's a bad explanation, but the whole league's in a situation, right? The whole league is in a situation where they're all playing these back-to-backs or every other days. So what do these other teams around the league have that the Flyers don't? Because I know you don't just watch the Flyers. You watch the entire league.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything specific that other teams are doing differently per se. I mean, it really comes down to execution when it's within a game. And the teams that don't execute are the ones that we find at the bottom of the standings. There's a reason why the Flyers played as poorly as they did in the beginning of the game against Buffalo and then won the game anyway, because Buffalo's not a very good team. And that's a little bit easier to overcome. It doesn't mean it's impossible. Like, it wasn't impossible for them to win, it was certainly a game they could have just as easily lost with that start. But they did find a way. They did play hard, and they did come back in the game. And you can look at the way they've come back in the third period of a couple of the games recently against Washington and say, they don't quit. And that's all well and good. But when you're in a shortened season and every team is playing in the same schedule and the same situations, it doesn't really make a difference to me. I don't care that you found a way to get it to within one. You didn't tie the game up at the end. And the early struggles at the beginning of the game didn't help you, and that's part of the reason why you're chasing the game for the rest of it. That's, it made me think so much about 2 years ago when I believe the number was 32 games out of 82 they fell behind 2-0. When you chase the game that often, you expel so much energy that you're always in that situation. And right now, that's been the biggest problem is it doesn't mean that they get off to that kind of start every single game. There are times they've gone out and scored the first goal and then still end up trailing by 1 or 2 at the end of the period. They get up 2 before the period's over, whatever. And you're still back chasing the game. You're still left trying to find that tying goal, and it puts you in a bad situation. So really from the start of a game, they need to be sharper and make crisp passes and get out of the zone and get out of their own way. That's been the most frustrating part is we've seen this team at their best at times, and we've seen that they've got the capability to do it. They've got the talent to do it. But when you don't execute and when you make regular mistakes and you shoot yourself in the foot every single night and multiple times a night, this is what you get. This is the product you get as a result. And nobody else is feeling sorry for them, that's for sure. The Islanders are on a roll. Boston's been slumping a little bit, but they've already established their spot with the hot start they had. Pittsburgh's on a roll. Washington's on a roll. Those teams are looking behind them and going, this is all well and good to them because they're carving out their spots in the playoffs right now, and the Flyers are left trying to figure out how they can get back into the picture by beating these teams down the road. But first things first, you got to beat a team that's behind you, and that's the Rangers right now.
Now, the one change with the lineup tonight is just Raffl in. He's back in the lineup. So is it interesting? Do you read anything into the fact that we know Vigneault in the past has said, I got to make changes. I want to do a shuffling. He even does changes in-game at times. So what does it say to you that we're in a situation where he's saying, you know what? we're going to keep most of this the same, and we're just going to push forward?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it says he's out of options, quite honestly, because, first of all, Michael Raffles coming back to the lineup and not coming back in to the position he typically plays. He's going to play center tonight, which is a little bit different for him. He's taken faceoffs on occasion, and that's not anything that's out of the ordinary for him, but it's not his natural position, and yet that's where he's going to play because you're leaving Oscar Lindblom on the fourth line right now. You're leaving Nick Aube-Kubel on the fourth line. And quite honestly, the way that I've seen two guys who are in the lineup who are still playing in the same spots they were at the end of the Washington game, it kind of tells you how limited their options are right now because Nolan Patrick is still going to be on the third line and Nick Aube-Kubel is still in the lineup. And both of those guys, to me, had situations where I'm not sure that I would have left things the way they are. Nolan Patrick had multiple turnovers in the game. He was pushed to the fourth line for a little bit and then eventually back up there because of the fact that they were trying to find a combination that got some offense going, and it worked out for him. He scored a goal, but two of his turnovers led to Washington goals, one directly and one that led to a penalty call that later gave Washington a power play goal. Nick Aube-Kubel missed a shift for 19 seconds, and you're a professional athlete, and you're not only a professional, but you're also a guy who plays. You're not Sean Couturier. You're not Claude Giroux. Your place in the lineup is not nearly as secure as those guys. When you have that kind of mental lapse in a game and just forget to go on the ice for that long so your team plays with four skaters, it's really, first of all, it's a shock that he even was back on the ice for most of the rest of the game because he was playing on the third line at one point in time too, and he was pushed back to the fourth and never went back up. And then quite honestly, I'm a little surprised that he's in the lineup and it's not Andy Andrioff in his place, who didn't really do anything wrong in those few games he played. Andrioff, he fought a guy, which can provide a spark. They did get a little bit of an energy boost after that, but nonetheless, he didn't do anything to damage what was going on any further than anybody else did. And what Aube-Kubel did is unacceptable at any level of the game, not just the NHL. So that it shows me that they're out of options with what they've got, because if Michael Raffl is playing center on the fourth line, which is not his natural position, you're trying your best to put Nolan Patrick alongside of talent that can maybe keep him going offensively now that he scored a goal for the first time in 18 games and keep him going in the right direction. And at the same time, you've got Claude Giroux playing on that line, which is a little unusual when your offense isn't going and it's going. It's not like they can't score goals, but when everything's not going the right way, you want your top guys playing as much as possible. And right now, it seems like things are getting lost in the shuffle right now, and guys are getting caught on the ice too long. So ice times of there was a big discussion about Scott Lawton's ice time over Claude Giroux's ice time, and why is Lawton playing more than Giroux? Sometimes it just comes down to you get stuck on the ice in a defensive shift and you can't get off the ice, so your ice time just keeps piling up, and when that guy finally gets on the ice, that's when his time finally starts to increase. But that comes down to things that they did right a year ago that they aren't doing right now. They're not winning the battles and maintaining the possession and controlling the play enough where they can keep the shifts short and make things happen in that sense.
Kevin Durso, our Flyers insider for 97.3 ESPN.com, joining us here on Game Night, previewing the Flyers versus Rangers right here on 97.3 ESPN-FM. Tim Saunders, Steve Coates on the call, top of the hour here on 97.3 ESPN-FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Kevin, since fans came back into the building, 1-3 in those 4 games, could maybe going on the road be an important mental reset for them, considering maybe they expected a little bit more of themselves with fans back in the building?
You have to hope so. I mean, you had every reason to be kind of fired up and ready to go for all of those games. And I understand what happened in the first game with fans in the building. It's a Sunday night game against Washington. Washington was a little more rested than you were, and you came off of a 3-game stretch in Pittsburgh on the road. You lost the last one. You didn't have the legs in the third period, and you got off to a good start, and then it faded. I kind of understand that to an extent. It doesn't make it right because every other team is playing the same kind of schedule, but I understand why the jump wasn't there the entire time, and you had to try to survive it, and you couldn't. It was still a very competitive game throughout. I mean, 3-1 is not a blowout by any stretch. But then after that, the way they played the first period of the Buffalo game was awful. The way they played to start out the Thursday game against Washington was awful, and the way they played in the middle portion, in the early middle portion of Saturday's game too, it's just awful. And it's not acceptable what they're doing right now. And you hoped that being at home and having people back in the building for the first time in a year, even if it's not the full capacity crowd, would do something, because Pittsburgh looked pretty energized when they got fans back in the building, so why not the Flyers? And it didn't work out that way. And, your season's hitting a very important crossroads right now. You're going on the road for 4 games. You're going to play both New York teams. The Rangers are below you, so you have to try to win those games to gain some ground back. Then you're going to play the Islanders, and that's a direct competition game. You have to beat those teams that are in front of you to try to make up some of the ground as well. And then you're going to come home and you're going to play the Islanders one more time. But then after that, I'm looking at the schedule again, and I see the Rangers a few more times. I see the Devils. I see Buffalo again. Well, that's everybody below you. That's those 3 teams that you're still keeping behind you for now anyway. Because imagine this. The way that the schedule looks right now, or the way the standings look, I should say, the Rangers are close enough that if they won these 2 games in regulation and your struggles continued, you're tied. And that's not a good place to be. Now you're coming closer to being even further down the standings than that. And what are people going to think then? It's, I know people are desperate for action at some point. They feel like a move needs to be made to improve this. You're going to get a different kind of move if you keep going this direction. And it was really baffling to hear Alain Vigneault and Claude Giroux and James Van Riemsdyk after Saturday say they're trending in the right direction. Are there things they are doing better than they were early in the year? Yes, they're taking more shots per game. They're suppressing more shots the other way. The high danger scoring chances are down against, and that's good. But you're still turning the puck over too much. Your penalty kill is still awful, and you're making way too many mistakes. Now your goaltending is poor as well. So you're caught in a position where everything is just starting to pile up on you, and you have to find a way out of this as soon as possible, because if you don't, then you're going to go very quickly. There's just under 4 weeks to go until the trade deadline. You're going to turn into something else that you don't want to be at the deadline, which is selling off people potentially if you can make deals, and that's exactly the area you don't want to go into. They said at the beginning of the year not making the playoffs was unacceptable because of the fact that you've kind of got to get to that point where it was this on again, off again, in the playoffs, not in the playoff stuff was not going to be a reasonable result anymore. You had to take that step forward. You won a playoff round last year. Now you got to keep taking that step forward. And if you don't, what's going to happen following all of that isn't going to be pretty. I can tell you that.
Now, you mentioned making a move. We are less than a month away from the NHL trade deadline. For those who don't know, it's in April. It's April, 12th, I believe? So
yeah.
We have time, obviously, but you know how people are. You said it yourself. The fans are clamoring for something. So what is the trade market looking out there? I know that you guys talked about it on the Open Hits podcast. For those who maybe didn't hear some of that conversation, I thought one of the points you guys brought up was very interesting, which is there's not a lot of teams who are selling just yet. There's a lot of teams that feel like they're in it. So unless you're like Anaheim, for example, you're not or Ottawa, for example, you're not really legitimately out of it just yet. So how do you foresee the trade landscape laying out for a team like the Flyers potentially?
Well, I do think that things are going to start to come to a head pretty soon in terms of the trade market, because a good point that's been made around the league is with the way that quarantine rules might be and things like that, you're not going to have teams waiting until mid-April to try to make that deal and then say, oh, wait, the new guy has to take 7 days before he can join the team. That's not really much of an acquisition at that point in time, because by the time you finally get that guy into your lineup, into your system, how many more days are supposed to go by from the trade deadline? Is it another week? Is it 10 days before he's able to play in a game? And now you're talking you have 5, 6, 7 games left in the regular season, and it doesn't become near as much of a help. So I think the next week or two, you're going to start to see more pickup. I've talked to you before about Nashville and how there seems to be a fit there. Matthias Ekholm is a name that keeps coming up for the Flyers, things like that, and a possibility for them. Nashville's had scouts at the minor league game for the last several games now. They've gone and scouted the Phantoms multiple times. They're going on the road to scout the Phantoms at this point. It seems like there's something tangible to this at this point. It doesn't mean anything's close, but very clearly Nashville's doing homework on not just the Flyers, but on a lot of teams, I'm sure, to try to figure out where they go. And, now a struggle for the rest of the year because of the fact that they have so many injuries to deal with that it just doesn't seem like it's possible for them to rebound from from their slow start and where they are in the standings, given everybody who's out of the lineup, given the performances of some of the players they already have. It's just not working out anymore like that. I think their window is pretty much slammed shut at this point, so they're going to start to move some people down the road. The same thing with, like you mentioned, teams like Anaheim. Buffalo may start to look this direction very soon, things like that. And I think you'll start to see the market pick up in the next couple of weeks, because People are going to have to, if you're a contending team, you're going to have to start thinking about that one piece or two pieces that put you over the top. And no, do the Flyers look like they're one piece away from being over the top? Probably not. I mean, it's pretty evident based on the last few games that they're not one player away or anything like that, but you're going to hear about those other teams. You're going to hear about Washington and Boston and teams like that who are probably going to get involved in trade talks thinking that one player could make all the difference in the world. And I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later.
He's Kevin Durso. Check out his full preview of the Flyers-Rangers game tonight over at 97.3ESPN.com. Follow him on Twitter at Kevin_Durso. He appeared live in the virtual flesh on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And his all guests, as always, 97.3 ESPN guests appear on the Boardwalk on the hotline. Kevin, great stuff today. Hopefully the Flyers can maybe get some things figured out for tonight because we want to see them win some games here, you know?
Absolutely. Sounds great. Thanks for having me, Josh.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Again, Kevin Durso joined us on the show. Great insights from him as always. We'll be getting you my FanDuel Sportsbook pick of the night. And just a little bit later in the show, we had a couple of wins over the weekend. We'll recap what we got right, what we got wrong, and we'll give you a pick for this evening. You know, it's interesting. You know, this week we only have the NBA games to pick from until the weekend. We won't be on the air Friday, so I'll try to give you a couple of my personal college basketball March Madness picks when we get to Thursday's show. And then you got the weekend. All college basketball, all weekend long. You can hear it right here on 97.3 ESPN. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 4 days, noon every day. We got you covered right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. And you can listen to the games as well. We stream them for you on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. So here's the deal. You can hear the Flyers games tonight and on Thursday night on the app. You can hear the tournament on the app as well. So we got you covered all across the board. 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN.com for your Sixers, Phillies, Flyers, Eagles, high school sports coverage, and of course the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM. Of course, we are live at the Matt Black Kia Studios here on 97.3 ESPN. You watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Flyers hockey coming up in about 10 minutes from now. Chief Coach Tim Saunders calling all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget about my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. That's right, FanDuel Sportsbook, proud sponsor of Game Night, and yours truly here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll give you my FanDuel pick tonight in just a couple minutes. But I want to remind you, there's always that one team that ruins your bracket. That's why this year, I'm betting the tournament on FanDuel Sportsbook. They're America's #1 sportsbook because FanDuel, your first bet is risk-free. It doesn't matter who you're betting on. New users get up to $1,000 in insight credit if your first bet doesn't win. With games all day and night, FanDuel has easy-to-use app, fast withdrawals, daily odds boosts. Every opportunity you want to win with FanDuel Sportsbook, they got it for you each and every day, all tournament long. And your next chance to win FanDuel is just minutes away. And if that's not enough, FanDuel wants to make you a millionaire. That's right. You listening to me right now, they want to make you a millionaire. They're giving away $1 million to one lucky bettor. New and existing users get an additional shot at the payout every day to bet the tournament. So if you want a shot at becoming a millionaire or even a thousandaire, download the FanDuel Sportsbook app, use my promo code Hennig, and get your risk-free bet and a shot at being a millionaire. That's promo code Hennig, only with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or to play, and present in NJRPA restrictions apply for $1 million drawing. Risk-free offer for first online real money wager only. You cannot bet on local college teams in Virginia and New Jersey. See full terms and conditions and details at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. So that means you cannot bet on Rutgers, if you're wondering what that means. I know sometimes people hear disclaimers that kind of goes over their head. No, trust me. You try to bet on Rutgers, they won't let you. It's not even being offered. That's what that part of that disclaimer means, for those who don't know. All right, so we made some picks over the weekend. I want to get to those to you real quick. As I always promise, I get to you. By the way, Latest article on 97.3 ESPN.com. Speaking of college basketball, I was at the MAC tournament over the weekend. Very interesting experience. I was one of the few people who was allowed in the building, so the article is kind of me bringing you into the arena, all right? Because the only people who were allowed in there were the media, the people who were from the schools, and select friends and family of the schools. Unofficially, there was 250 socially distanced fans at Boardwalk Hall on Saturday for the championship game, where Rick Pitino's Iona Gales defeated the Cinderella team Fairfield that had stormed their way through the tournament. Very unlikely. So full details on the article get you a little insight into what happened at Boardwalk Hall this weekend and all of last week over right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. So I gave you a couple college basketball picks over the weekend. I got Alabama -3.5 right. We were wrong about Oklahoma State. Holy Toledo. Woo! I mean, they just got smacked up the back of the head by Texas. Good for Texas. They never actually won a Big 12 championship before Saturday, so good for them. So we got that wrong. The parlay I gave you guys, Dan Ige, Angela Hill, Charles Jobain, and Ronnie Yaya was plus 235 odds. We nailed that. St. Bonaventure told you they were going to win. They won the Atlantic 10 tournament. And then Bilal Powell doesn't even go on the record because that was counted as a no contest. So that does not count as a win at all for any of us. So those are the picks over the weekend. All right. Pick for FanDuel Sportsbook tonight. Again, don't forget the promo code Hennig, Hennig, when you sign up with FanDuel Sportsbook to get same-game parlay insurance, your first risk-free bet up to $1,000, and for your chance to be a millionaire with FanDuel Sportsbook. Pick for tonight, I'm going the Lakers and Warriors game, but I'm not going with the Lakers. Give me the Warriors +2. Alex Caruso is coming off a concussion. They don't expect to have a few guys out there, including Dudley. He's pretty much done for the year. Remember, no Kyle Kuzma. Kyle Kuzma's day-to-day. He's dealing with an injury, feels like, every single day. The Lakers team is beat up. Warriors team is more fresh. It's in Oakland as well. And of course, for your same-game parlay, I am going Warriors +2 combined with Dennis Schroeder. That's right, Dennis Schroeder to score more than 20 points. That is a parlay of +396. Schroeder himself has scored 20 points already twice since he came back from his COVID issues. He's averaging 18 points a game in the previous 5 games since he came back from COVID. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night. Hope you have a great night. Flyers hockey next.